Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Creepy Soccer Coach Gets Revenge and Then He Gets Delayed Karma. I've never been what you'd call a people person. So, I'm a realist. If I was the only student who had a conflict with this teacher, I'm willing to admit I'm probably the weak link in the chain. Back in school, I used to draw and doodle on my assignments. It started as distraction for me. I got bored doing my work, so I'd doodle something in the margin to make things less boring. But it continued because a lot of teachers got a bizarre kick out of my pathetic art. Disclaimer: I have no art skills whatsoever. But perhaps in my ineptitude, I tumbled onto something that teachers found amusing? It's hard to say, but I won a lot of goodwill from a lot of teachers in school with my bad art. They thought my little cartoon characters were funny. That lasted up through my junior year. I had a soccer coach as my history teacher. I shall call him Coach Dickhead. And Coach Dickhead didn't take kindly to my art. And fair enough, it was bad art. But he took it way too far. He said it was graffiti and tried to get me suspended from school. The assistant principal was a stand-up guy. He wadded up Coach Dickhead's report, threw it in the wastebasket and told me to forget about it. He also told me to knock it off with the art. And fair enough, I'd already gotten a lot of mileage out of it. Time to give it a rest? The problems didn't stop there though. Nope, that incident put me on his radar. I wasn't suspended like Coach Dickhead wanted, so he decided it was time to bully me in class. He made fun of me and called me names in front of the other students. I got along with most of them, so it's really not as bad as it sounds. It didn't make my social standing in high school any better or worse. But it was still inappropriate for a teacher to behave that way. Remember I said that I'd roll with it if I was the only one who didn't get along with Coach Dickhead? Well, I wasn't the only one. There were others. Some of what follows is stuff I personally witnessed. So, it may sound like too much to believe. But I saw most of this myself, except for some obvious stuff that obviously I wouldn't have been privy to. Coach Dickhead liked showing off to win approval from the boy students in the room. We're talking about a pushing 50-year-old man. And here he was trying to win approval from teenage boys. He bragged about having sex with an entire female Filipino soccer team and other dumb crap. Literally nobody believed him. Another time, he claimed he got into bar fights and went really over the top with it. To hear him tell it, he was Neo or something. Obnoxiously unbelievable. Worst of all, I watched him sexually harass various girls in the class. TVs were mounted to the ceiling in each classroom. Coach Dickhead would pretend to be messing with something on the TV while pressing his package against the desk of the female student sitting directly under the TV mounting brackets. Needless to say, the female student didn't appreciate that one bit. We shall call this girl the reformer. One day after class, the reformer pulled me aside and said I and a few other students she'd corralled should go to the head principal's office and complain about Coach Dickhead's antics. I didn't see what that would accomplish. But what the heck, why not? As I expected, it came to nothing. We got totally blown to duck off. Nobody believed us. Another day, another dollar. Things went on that way for a few more weeks. Coach Dickhead continued being his obnoxious self. I guess he found out about the reformer, me and our friends dropping a dime on him to the principal because he made a point of calling us out in class, either individually or as a group. More bullying, more harassment, etc. Things went from bad to worse. One day, I guess he got drunk one night or something and didn't have a lesson planned for us. So, instead of doing actual work, he took us to the library to do a crossword puzzle. I didn't take that seriously, picked a book off the shelf and started reading it. Coach Dickhead didn't like that. He snatched my crossword puzzle away from me. I'm in a hole, I admit it. So, I picked an argument with Coach Dickhead. A shouting match ensued. Eventually, I lost my temper and said, "Whatever, just take the puzzle, you ducking dickhead." Hence, his present moniker of Coach Dickhead. Obviously, I got hauled into the assistant principal's office again. Coach Dickhead wanted me expelled. But I knew he was dreaming, that was never going to happen. The app gave me in-school suspension. And fair enough, I did cuss at a teacher, you've got to expect something from that. As the app assigned me my suspension, he said that I shouldn't have called Coach Dickhead a dickhead. He emphasized that I wasn't necessarily wrong. I just shouldn't have said that. A snowball had started rolling. Apparently, that incident was one too many disciplinary problems for Coach Dickhead. I was told that the Dickhead library incident was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was explained to me that Coach Dickhead regularly hauled people into the AP's office. I later heard he had other teachers outnumbered something like 3-to-1 with unruly students who never seemed to have problems in any other class, only with him. Why is only Coach Dickhead experiencing these problems? The administrators all wondered. So, an investigation began. It gets worse. And this is where stuff I personally witnessed comes to an end. Part of the investigation included talking to students Coach Dickhead regularly interacted with. Remember I said earlier that Coach Dickhead was a soccer coach? Yeah, girls' soccer. Apparently, Coach Dickhead would walk in on the girls in their locker room when they were in various states of undress. The girls alternately asked politely and demanded not so politely that Coach Dickhead knock it off with walking in on them like that. Seems reasonable, right? But he reserved the right to walk into their locker room at any time, usually when they were most likely to be undressed. It got to a point where one girl would take one for the team, skip her shower and serve as lookout to give the other girls a heads up in case Coach Dickhead was on the prowl. Understandably, they got tired of that, so, independently of me and my friends, they complained to the head principal. And this was one complaint even the head principal couldn't ignore. Unfortunately for Coach Dickhead, the other inquiry into his behavior and methods was already in full swing by this point. When everybody put their heads together, they reached one obvious conclusion: Coach Dickhead has to go. But rather than fire him outright, they gave him a choice: resign or face termination. If he resigns, he can probably find a job someplace else. But if he gets fired, well, it won't look so good. Coach Dickhead chose to resign at the end of the year. He was gone. And all this started because I lost my temper and called him a dickhead in front of dozens of students in the library. So, that's the revenge part of the story. Anyway, I never saw him again after the end of my junior year. Postscript: by all rights, the above really should have been the end of the story ends. But it's not. A few years after graduating, I started up with a girl in a nearby town. I told my girlfriend from this nearby town all about the above shenanigans. After a certain point, her face went white. So, I asked her what's up. She said that her senior year, i.e., the very next year after Coach Dickhead was forced to resign, a new girls' soccer coach started up at her high school. But he only lasted the 1 year. He gained notoriety by, say it with me, walking in on the girls' soccer team when they were undressed. When her school admins heard about that, this person got fired, not forced to resign, ducking fired, straight off. Independently of me, the girl said the culprit was Coach Dickhead's real name. I'd never told her his name. But she knew it anyway. That's the karma, or justice, part of the story. Next one is titled, This Is Not Jim's Number. Many years ago, around 1998 to 99, my husband and I moved to a new city and we had a landline as cell phones weren't widely in use at the time. We had caller ID. Late one weeknight, we were startled awake at around 2 a.m. by the phone ringing. Heart pounding, fearing a death in the family or other such tragedy, I anxiously answered. It was an obviously drunk woman asking for Jim. I told her she had the wrong number and hung up. She rang again and argued that it was Jim's number. I told her it may have once been his number, but it was my number now and there was no Jim here. It took at least an hour for me to relax enough to get back to sleep and I was tired at work all the next day. I was annoyed, of course, but these things happen, and I got over it. Until it happened again a few nights later. And again a few nights after that. And then a fourth time. After that fourth time, I was no longer annoyed, I was super mad. I couldn't get back to sleep at all. I decided as long as I was awake, I might as well make good use of my time. I used the caller ID to call this woman to remind her that Jim still wasn't at this number. I called her at 3:45 and again at 4:30 to remind her that Jim no longer had the phone number 555XX. I called at 6 and before leaving for work at 7. For the next week I called each morning when my alarm went off at 5:45 and again before I left for work at 7. If I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, I'd call her as long as I was up. Each time I could tell I woke her up, it was glorious. Don't forget, Jim is no longer at 555XX. Then, after a week, I stopped. I never received another call from her, either, so I guess my reminders worked. Next one is titled, I'm a Pretty Minded Badman. About 6 years ago, I worked for a company, UK, which provided a supported living type home for adults with mental health issues. There were about 5 or 6 clients that lived there permanent and were supported 24 hours. There was about 10 to 12 staff, a senior staff member and one overall manager. The whole house was overlooked by a regional manager who managed over houses also. Without going into too much detail, the whole company was a crap show, with staff members not fit to support rocks from rolling into the sea and a senior who tried to micromanage every aspect of us lowly staff members, but failed miserably because A, he was a knob and B, he couldn't supervise a knees up at a hokey-cokey completion. The main manager was no better. He spent his days in his office glued to his computer trying to fix the monthly rota he constantly balled up. Anyway, one day we were informed we needed to have a visitor's book, with details about the house and a character page of each staff member, including a photograph and a description of the staff member's strengths and experience, plus a little bio in our own words to describe our personality. This came just as I was due to start my notice period of 1 month, before I left for a new job. Despite my reasoning that I wouldn't be around to enjoy its existence, I was to have a photo and do my bio anyway, as it was policy and policy in that place was king. When it was finished, it was a thing of beauty. A cheap plastic folder crammed full of the company's finest. Like a wanted Public Enemy's #1 mugshot album of fuglies who shouldn't be allowed out after dark, let alone be in charge of vulnerable adults. When it was done, up it went on a shelf to gather dust and remain until if there ever was an important visitor, then it would be dusted off and shown to the VIP so they could nod and say what a marvelous crowd we all were. As I'm a mischievous bugger, on my last night shift before I went for good, I took down the folder, threw away the original pages and spent nearly the 3 nights I was working putting together new bios and pics for everyone. It was mostly silly stuff. Pictures replaced photographs of the staff to match personalities, e.g., there was a guy working there from South America, so in went a picture of a Mexican bandit, an Irish fella into a leprechaun, etc. I also redid the descriptions below and filled that with nonsense, like, "Hi, my name's Dave. I have 12 years experience of working in an abattoir but I'm new to the company. If anybody dies while I'm on shift, I know how to make the body disappear." Or, "My name's Mike, I'm into live role-playing mystic unicorns. I'm 52 years old and still live with my parents in a caravan in a motorway services." The icing on the cake, the regional manager, a proper slick-looking white boy, had on his Facebook page a photo of him posing in woman's underwear. Looked like it was for a joke, and guess what? That went in there too. After it was done, I patted myself on the back and returned the blessed thing back to its spot on the shelf. Finished up my notice and moved on to pastures new. About 6 months down the line, I had a phone call of one of my ex-colleagues. I first thought it was a dirty phone call, until I realized the gasping and other noise was them struggling to breathe over laughing so hard. Apparently there was a mythical VIP visit with one of the major big knobs. In their eagerness to impress the regional manager, encouraged the house manager to show the visitor the staff welcome to house folder. Apparently the fallout was a glorious thing to behold, and I would have paid good coin to have been a fly on the wall. If you've made it this far, thank you for reading and hope you enjoyed my little tale. Next one is titled, Sister Always Steals My Food, I Make a Fool of Myself on Her Graduation to Stop Her. I come from a family of 6, my parents, my older sister, my older brother, my little brother, and me. Often, in order to bribe us into good behavior, our parents would buy us our favorite candy to munch on in the car. Now, I've never exactly been a giving person, not huge on sharing just for the sake of sharing. My parents, however, were trying to raise respectful and generous kids, and often forced me to share things even when I didn't want to. That's all fine and good, except that my sister abused this system. See, she would say she didn't want a bag of candy, then once we were on the road she'd start taking candy from all three of the brothers. That really upset me. I didn't get candy often, as my mum didn't like feeding us sugary food, so when I got my own bag of Sour Patch watermelon I wanted to eat every last one myself. Besides, my parents would always offer to buy her a bag of candy for herself. She would just refuse because she knew she could leech off the rest of us. So after a point I started refusing her requests for candy. But that crap didn't fly with my mum, because that was being selfish, so she would force me to hand over the candy. One time I even said when I purchased my bag at CVS, "Sister, I'm not going to give you any of my candy. If you want Sour Patch, buy your own right now." "I'm fine," she responded, "I don't want a whole bag of candy." Fast forward 20 minutes into the car ride, my father was requisitioning a candy to give to my sister, as I sat fuming. This went on for years, my whole life really. And I hated it. I would hide my candy when I got it, I would try and keep it out of her reach, but always a parent would intervene. Fast forward to my sister's college graduation. She is now 22, I am a senior in high school at this point, and we're up at her school at a fancy-ass restaurant celebrating after she had graduated that morning. In attendance are all immediate and some extended family, some close friends of my sister, and her long-term boyfriend who I was meeting for the first time. So, enough people for the following to be embarrassing to my family. Our meal ends and my mother offers to buy a nice dessert for anyone who wants it. My brothers, my dad and I all take her up on it. I ordered a vanilla bean cheesecake with a burnt sugar bird's nest on top. My mother repeatedly offers to buy my sister anything she wants, but my sister says she couldn't possibly eat a full dessert right now, and turns it down every time. The food arrives, and everyone is staring at mine. I'm sitting right at the head of the table in full view of everyone, so it's hard not to look, and aside from the cake slice being large and delicious looking, the burnt sugar bird's nest is huge and ornate, hollow on the inside like a ducking old-timey brass globe or some crap. Honestly, it was pretty impressive. And right as the food gets placed in front of us, my sister says, "I'll just have a bite of everyone's." At this point, I'm seeing red, having flashbacks to all the times my food has been stolen. Logically, the right thing to do would have been to just hand over one bite. I mean, it was her graduation, it was a huge cake, and it would have been no loss. But it had become a matter of principle. So, the moment she says this, in one fell swoop, in full view of everyone at the table, I sweep up my slice of cheesecake and stuff the entire thing into my mouth at once, shattering the sugar nest, crumbs falling everywhere, in front of my whole family and some college students close to my sister who, again, never met in my life. Next one is titled, "You Can Butt in Line but It's Not Going to Do You Any Good." My husband and I were visiting Amiens a couple of years ago and we wanted to take a boat ride through the canals of the famous floating gardens. When we arrived at the ticket counter there were a few people already in line, so my husband lined up behind them. The boat tickets were numbered, and as she sold enough tickets to fill a boat, the counter lady would announce the numbers that were to be seated next on the public address system down by the water. While we were waiting to be served, an older couple came in and stood beside my husband. When it was our turn, my husband stepped up to the counter and asked for 2 tickets. Pushing my husband aside, the older man who had come in after us stepped up to the counter and told the woman that he wanted 2 tickets. My husband protested that we had been here first, and that he should wait his turn. The man ignored my husband, and very loudly and aggressively demanded the tickets. My husband told him that he was rude and again, that he should wait his turn. Turning his back to my husband, the man gave the woman his money. The lady at the counter shrugged and with an apologetic look to us, served the rude man. The man took the tickets, and with a triumphant look at us, he and his wife made their way down to the boats. The woman at the counter apologized for the man's rudeness, sold us our tickets and asked us to wait for our number to be called down by the canal. We weren't happy, but what are you going to do? We thanked her, and as we waited for our boat we saw the rude man and his wife sitting on a bench also waiting for their ticket number to be called. The ticket numbers of the people who had been in front of us were called and we watched as they entered a boat. And then our numbers were called. We were confused because it should have been the turn of the rude man and his wife, but we double-checked and they were our numbers, so we got on the boat. The lady who sold us the tickets had skipped the ticket numbers of rude man and his wife to let us get on first. Then we watched as boat after boat was filled with kids on a school trip who had come after us, while the rude man and his wife were left still waiting for their numbers to be called. And they were still waiting as our boat pulled away and we began our tour of the floating gardens. Thanks for the petty revenge, nice ticket lady. Next one is titled, Gays Are Gross? Okay, I got you. Just before I came out I was working as an electrician at a company that specialized in installation testing. We would go and test the wiring in all kinds of buildings and had quite a few contracts including testing schools, offices and doctors' surgeries. My boss at the time was a complete dick, homophobic, exist and the kind of guy that loves the smell of his own poo. I couldn't stand him. One unfortunate day I had to attend a job with him and a couple of others on our crew to carry out a test at a doctor's surgery. All day I had to listen to his derogatory jokes. I snapped. All around the surgery were pamphlets on stations. I grabbed quite a few and placed them in his van, toolbox and lunch bag. Apparently it was his wife that found the first one in his lunch bag and she went mad. He had us all in the office the next morning. His head looked like it was going to pop off. He couldn't prove it was any of us and I left about a month after. Good times. Last one is titled, Restarted the terminal again and again on router due to freeloading relative. My partner is a really nice guy and when people come up to him for favors, he would gladly give it to them, including giving away the password to our Wi-Fi. OME of his cousins are a bit rude and disrespectful. They would spend hours on the front porch playing MMORPG games without as much as a hi or hello. Sometimes they would stay until 11 PM playing games. Well, since I am the one paying for internet, I have had it with them, so today as they were playing their games I restarted the terminal from the comfort of my computer again and again and again, making them lose the match. I could have told them to leave, but seeing them lose their game was even more satisfying. I think I'll do this again tomorrow until they develop a trauma of using our internet. Just gonna do some Pavlov crap on them that the thought of using our Wi-Fi will cause them great anxiety. Thanks for listening.